Hello, welcome to the Research and Development Tax Incentives Explained, presented by ESS BizTools. I'm Peter Towers, Managing Director of ESS BizTools. I hope that you're having a wonderful day. We are doing a live feed to social media, so if you happen to be watching on social media and you have any questions, can you send me an email, please, peter@essbiztools.com.au, and I'll reply to you. If you're part of the live audience and you have a question, please type it into chat and I will answer it during the webinar. And if you're watching this webinar at a time a bit more convenient to you and to your firm, and you have any questions, please send me an email, peter@essbiztools.com.au. So let's get on with it. Research and development. Is it a myth? Well, let's clear up the myth. You don't have to be an engineer or a scientist to advise a client on research and development tax incentives. I've advised plenty over the years. Your role is more comparable to being an internal auditor. The responsibility for undertaking the research and development activities is primarily with your client. Now, your client can appoint other people to assist them. They may have gone to a university department and contracted out the work. That's claimable under the research and development legislation, as long as, of course, that the whole project's accepted by AusIndustry as being legitimate research and development activities. There are also specialist consultants, mainly in the capital cities, who can undertake this work as advisors. But it's not your role to be undertaking the research activities. So I don't believe that an accountant to advise in this area needs any specialist credentials, because there's a significant amount of paperwork required for a research and development project, and it has to be prepared in many cases on a daily basis and then accumulated at the end of the financial year for submission of the reports to AusIndustry and ultimately through to the tax office. But the prime review organisation on research and development activities is AusIndustry. They're the organisation that has the expertise to decide whether your client is undertaking a legitimate research and development activity. The tax office waits until they get a indication by a reference number that you have to include in the taxation return of the company for the tax office to then process the benefits of the research and development rebate. I don't think enough people realise that AusIndustry play a crucial role in this whole activity. Another myth is that SMEs are not interested in research and development. Now, I've run into that problem many times over the years. At one stage, I was a special business advisor to a major AusIndustry program called COMET, Commercialising Emerging Technology, which was one of the key programs introduced by the Liberal government under John Howard. And there were 12 of us worked in that program around Australia. And I got told on a number of occasions that accountants couldn't undertake advisory work on research and development, and I rejected that. But let's look at what's happened. When I hear that SMEs are not interested in research and development, well, 46% of the total number of companies that participated in research and development activities in 2022-23 were companies with turnovers under $10 million, most definitely in SME land. The Tax Office released a very interesting report on the 25th of November 2025 called the Research and Development Tax Incentive Transparency Report, which gave us a lot of very interesting data. And this report highlighted the significant contribution being played by SMEs in the development of knowledge in Australia. And I personally believe we really need that incentive to be occurring. We've become a nation of importers. We're exporting the raw materials and then we're buying it back at inflated prices. Why can't we produce more in Australia? We need to be really encouraging our SME clients to be undertaking research and development. The government's put the program in place. And I think as accountants, we need to be communicating the objectives of the research and development scheme and the benefits that can accrue to SMEs. So the 46% calculated out at 6,016 companies. 6,016. Did you have any of those? I hope you did, but if you didn't, I think that should give you an inspiration. 6,000 companies participated in 2022-23. Hopefully when we receive the figures for 23-24 and then 24-25, those figures will have been increased. But there's also another important group in this, according to the ATO's information. 4,507 privately owned and wealthy groups of companies. That's how they describe them. That related at 35% of the total. These were companies with turnovers over $10 million. And they related to 35% of the total. Now, when you look at that, companies with turnovers over $10 million, they were privately owned and wealthy groups, I suspect a fair number of those were, in fact, companies which we would describe as small businesses. There's no effective definition of small business these days, is there? The crowdsource funding equity raising cutoff is at $25 million turnover. The taxation office allowance of a withdrawal of money is based, if the company's trading at a loss and undertaking research and development, is set at $20 million. I think the figure up to 30 million, but I know some of you will have clients that you consider are SMEs, maybe got turnovers of up to $100 million. But I would like to think that out of that 4,507 companies, some of those would also be defined as SMEs, if you were the accountant acting for them, and you may well be acting for some of those businesses. And our estimate then is, I've done some figuring with numbers, that the total number of companies that were forming the representation for SMEs was probably somewhere between 7,000 and 8,000 companies. 7,000 and 8,000. Now, the average clientele in the accountancy firms that I've dealt with of dealing with research and development companies seems to be somewhere between 1 and 10, maybe up to 15. This is companies servicing the SME market. So that's a lot of accounting firms that have been involved in this process. Now, I know a significant number of those businesses will probably be serviced by a Big Four firm or a top 100 firm, because that's where a lot of SMEs have had to gravitate to, because accountants have said, oh, no, it's too complicated. We don't know anything about it. Well, I hope we're going to convince you to think about that. The average research and development expenditure by those 6,016 companies was $403,000. That's the average. I've acted for some companies that are up over $2-3 million, and I'm sure some of you may have also. But so there's some fairly big amounts gone through for some SMEs. That's the average figure. Some of them, of course, will be very low. All they have to do is to get over $20,000 in the financial year to be part of this overall program. The average expenditure in that so-called wealthy group of and privately owned companies was $1.1 million. So they all got higher. So on an overall basis, my guesstimating is that the average, if we say 7,000 to 8,000 of those companies were probably SMEs, the average expenditure would be somewhere between 550,000 and 600,000. Now that is the expenditure on research and development activities. So that would include wages for their business, the materials they've had to purchase in, and if they've hired external consultants to undertake the research activities, their costs and numerous other costs can form part of this activity. Now, I think it's worth looking at what the top 5 industries for small business expenditure on research and development activities was. Professional, scientific and technical services, a total of $1.2 billion across 2,820 companies. How many clients have you got that fit into that category? Professional, scientific and technical. Now, a lot of that's computers and technology, but what about manufacturing? A total of 402 million, and there was 1,136 companies. Information, media and telecommunications. $122 million was spent by 340 companies. Wholesale trade, $83 million across 273 companies. To be honest, I don't think I've ever given advice to anyone that was in the wholesale trade area or the next one, the retail trade. I was a bit surprised when I saw those figures. And the retail trade is nearly the same, $82 million across 247 companies. How many clients have you got into these categories? Have you ever thought of having a discussion with them about research and development? The total number of small business companies in that top 5 category was 4,816. So there were 6,016 in total. So the top 5 activities took the lion's share, 4,816 of those companies. Does that open up any potential possibilities when you're thinking about your own clientele? Because this is the opening of the opportunity to grow businesses for your clients. I call it the innovation highway that they can become involved in. And if you have clients involved in that, you're going to have significant work to do. So there's a significant opportunity for accounting and bookkeeping firms to be more proactive in advising SMEs on the taxation benefits, but the long-term business benefits that can emerge from the conduct of research and development activities. They can grow into quite big companies. So the research and development story has assisted thousands of Australian businesses to develop new ideas and systems. Now, some of them elected not to become household names as such. They made modifications in their processes, in their work with special clients. It made life easier. Hopefully it improved their bottom line and they got on with their business. But others, of course, have gone on to develop great products that have been able to be sold all over Australia and internationally. Now, we're keen to assist the emergence of SMEs wanting to explore the undertaking of research and development, because Australia really needs this entrepreneurship to get the business activities that we need. So our role is to produce the material that we think you need to be able to communicate with your clients. Now, you can do all this yourself if you want to sit down and read the legislation and read a whole stack of information from the tax office and Oz Industry. But we've prepared that for you, and for a fairly small amount over every year, you can contribute to the packages and utilize them with as many clients as you like. It's not a charge on a per client basis. Our objective is to ensure that every accounting and bookkeeping firm, if you're interested in Australia, can have this type of activity being undertaken within your firms for your clients' benefit. So we can help you to offer these services to your clients and prospects. So the research and development package that we've developed is in two components. We have the research and development introduction package, and we then have the research and development consolidated package. Consolidated covers everything. The introduction just looks at that basic initial communication so that you can answer the client's questions. And we're going to go through some of those in a moment. We have a research and development procedure control form in both of those packages, and we have that type of control document in each of our 35 product packages within ESS BizTools to guide you through the process. And that links to various forms and papers and flowcharts that we have prepared to explain the process, to give you the tools to be able to answer clients' queries and to give them information to read. So I've given you some examples of my experience over the years of what the inquiry is from the clients. I've had one guy come in to see me and said, I've just found out that one of my competitors was bragging in the pub on Friday night that he's received a research grant. How do I get one of those? That was the question. And that could be the first type of inquiry that you get. The second type of inquiry I have come to talk to you because I am keen to undertake a number of research and development projects. But my current accountant has told me that it is too complicated, that it's not work that accountants get involved in, and that I should go and talk to one of the big four accounting firms. I won't feel comfortable talking to one of those firms. I don't live near a capital city or a major provincial city. Would you like to hear my story and advise me whether your firm could assist me? Now, these are people who are out at the coalface undertaking research activities who are looking for help. And unfortunately, the feedback I've received, and I got a lot of it in that period of nearly 12 years that I acted as a consultant for Oz Industry in the Commercialising Emerging Technology program, I heard that story time and time again, how difficult it was to get advice on research and development activities. Our system will enable you to answer both of those inquiries. There's no reason why accounting or bookkeeping firms should reject assisting clients on research and development activities. We've produced 13 flowcharts to assist you to explain to your client how the research and development system operates. And they can understand the process from there. It all starts in our first flowchart, which explores the initial idea, because that's where it all starts from. Someone's had an idea. It might be a second-year apprentice on the floor of a workshop who woke up at 3 a.m. And in fact, I was shown one of these on one occasion. The client produced a sheet of paper and said, look at this. And I said, where'd you get that from? He said, oh, the young boy in the second-year apprentice reckoned he couldn't sleep this morning and got up and wrote out a whole chart of drawings of how he could change things to make his life easier, and he said it will improve the business. So I said, well, what have you done with it? He said, I called over the foreman who the young boy had discussed it with, and I said, okay, let's allocate a small team, a couple of people, for a couple of days, and let's have a look at it. Is it worthwhile? And it turned out it was a great idea. So ideas can come from anywhere. I think what we need to be doing is encouraging our clients to encourage those ideas so that they can do something about it. So the initial flowchart, which is the key component of the research and development introduction package, is to follow the path from the initial idea through to getting the board of directors approval for a research and development project to be undertaken. It is important that the board of directors approves. Now, some of your clients obviously will be operating companies that they're the sole director. They still have to have that meeting and sign off that they have approved this project. And within ESS BizTools, we got a template of directors' meetings to consider a proposal and approve it so that you have that documentation in the system. Because the whole idea is, as I see your role, that's why I referred to it as an internal auditor, that you'll make sure all of the documentation that's required is within the clients and your records. Now, you don't have to produce all of that initially to either Oz Industry or the tax office. You basically supply information extracted from it. But if your client's subjected to an audit, this information needs to be able to be produced. The other flow charts, and there's another 12 of them, then go into the research and development consolidated program, which goes from getting the board approval to how we work our way through the actual research activities, what goes on daily, weekly, monthly during that process. And I believe that your role during that process is to make sure you're having at least a monthly meeting with the client to check that those records are being kept. Because one of the things that we need to communicate to our clients undertaking this type of work is that, in my experience, quite a number of them have got people working for them who are on international gap years, or they've graduated from a university in Europe or in America, and they're working around Australia and having a look at what's going on. But ultimately, they're going to go back to their homeland. It might be 2 to 3 years later that your client receives an inquiry from the tax office or Oz Industry that they want to do a review on me. If that team member has not completely documented everything that he or she did at that time, it's going to be very difficult to get the information that's required. So that highlights the importance of the documents being completed. Well, what did we do today? What was the result of the experiments? And incidentally, a side issue that I forgot to mention in the slides. I've had some people call me at times and say, well, we did everything you said, Peter, but it didn't work, so that was a bit of bad luck. And I said, hang on, are you saying you're not claiming it? Yeah, we're not going to claim it. I said, you can, and a couple of times I never got the words out before I got a comment down the phone, oh, that's right, we can still claim it. I said, if you've abided by the documentation and in effect what the law says, you can still claim it even though it was a failure, because the government has been around long enough to know that there's going to be a lot of dry gullies in this whole process. A lot of things won't work out, but they want it documented. This is what we did, and this was the result, and unfortunately, that's not the result we were after. Sometimes, though, your client might fluke something. They've started off thinking that they're going to get one answer, and they get another answer. And if you read a lot of reports on the development of products all over the world, this has happened a lot more than probably how much that we really understand, where people ended up with a new product that they never really set out to achieve it in the first place. And one of the other key things in all this is you don't have to apply to the tax office before you start on any of this. You select, you're going to start, you start keeping the records. The first thing that Oz Industry or the tax office know is when you lodge your first annual report, which in the first instance goes to Oz Industry, because they've got the people who are able to check that the research sounds reasonable. They're the experts because they run a lot of grant programs and a lot of activities to do with research activities. And they issue a reference number, which you then lodge in the tax, insert in the tax return before you lodge it, and off it goes to the tax office, who then know that Oz Industries have undertaken their initial review and that the tax office should process the financial benefits, whatever they may be. Now, if your client is a company with a turnover less than $20 million and trading at a loss, the directors can elect in the tax return to receive a cash benefit of the calculation of the R&D rebate amount, and that can get paid into the company's bank account, and the aim by the tax office is to pay that in within 30 days of the tax return being lodged. So that's another benefit of this whole system. We have available a full system program so that we can support you on your journey, so that you are in a comfortable position to meet the client, to explain how the systems operate. So if we go back, if we go back to that original proposition that I raised, where someone has come in to see you and says he wants to get a R&D grant along the lines of what his competitors got, you may have said to your client, well, Jim, one of the initial problems we've got is that you're not a company. You've got to be a company to claim this. You're a partnership. So that could be the first instance. The second matter might then be, well, how much do you think you're going to spend on research and development? Because you have to spend a minimum of $20,000 on legitimate activities in the financial year that you're making the claim. So there can be some sorting out, but if you've seen from the figures earlier, $403,000 was the average expenditure, according to the Australian Taxation Office report. The second example that I gave you, where the business person wanting to undertake research and development was really shopping around to try to find an accountant so that he or she didn't have to travel to a capital city where most of the big four firms are to get some advice. Now, I know there are accountants around Australia who do specialise in research and development, but I think there's a lot more work that could be undertaken. And I think that would probably attract more and more people to undertake research and development, because it's a subject that I would like to think that you're talking to your clients about and showing them the benefit. I think your questions to a client, and especially a new client, should be, do you undertake research and development? Now, that might start a discussion. And with our system, you've got some material that you can immediately make available to the client. And you might be surprised where that leads to. I think you should be informing your client that you will meet with them on a monthly basis during a program, so you can review what is occurring, what record keeping standard they're preparing the records at, whether the time sheets or time recording for the employees who are involved are adequate, whether the recording that's been implemented for any external people that they've got working on the project, which could be tradesmen, could be professionals, could be university people, whether that's adequate to the standards that we've summarised in the system that you need to ensure that's being supplied. Because all of this is building up so that at the end of the year, you've got a complete cost. Now, one of the benefits of making sure this happens during the year is that if your client has a turnover of under $20 million and is trading at a loss, there will undoubtedly be some pressure put on you to make sure the annual accounts are prepared as quickly as possible after the 30th of June, and that the return that has to be lodged with Oz Industries is prepared and lodged promptly, so that your client can receive and if they've made the election to get the cash equivalent paid into their bank account of the research and development rebate, so they can get that money, which is vital cash flow for them, to utilise in further research activities, which in my observation is where most of it goes. So your clients will be looking at it. Our total system has got 46 forms in it. Now, you're not going to use 46 forms on one client. But if you have 10 to 15 clients ultimately undertaking research and development, you might find that you use some of those unusual forms once or twice a year. We've got those forms in there because when you read the guidelines and read the legislation, there's a possibility that someone may be undertaking that activity. So we've tried to build it in. And we ask our subscribers that if you come across anything that we haven't included that you needed the form for, please contact us and we'll make sure we develop that into the system. We've also got 13 individual papers explaining the various processes. We explain the taxation benefits and how they're calculated, but we go through all aspects. And instead of producing a 200-page book, which is far too big for most SMEs to worry about, we've broken it down into 13. It might be 20 to 30 pages in each, but it's a lot easier to read. And it is commenting on a particular subject, which makes it a bit easier to get through. So this is the start of the innovation journey for your clients. Some of these companies will grow significantly over the journey. And if they do that, they're going to need financial, commercial, management, accountancy, advisory services input. And why is that? Well, they're going to be looking to attract funding because in my experience, most of these research organisations tend to run out of money and they'll be looking for a business plan. Now, the documentation I'm referring to now is not part of the research and development package, but it's definitely part of the ESS BizTools financial forecasting package. So we've got templates and guidance on the preparation of a business plan, not a plan you go off and write on your own, but a plan you sit down with the leadership team in 2 or 3 separate sessions and gain from then their input on what they want to see out of this business, because it's very important that they have responsibility for the implementation of the business plan. I find that in actual practice, they're not very enthusiastic about a business plan once they run into the first problem if they haven't been intimately involved in the development of it. If they have, it's a bit hard for them to sit at the back of the room and say, well, I had nothing to do with this. The next thing is the predictive accounting reports. These are the budgets, the key drivers. The key drivers are the key sub-accounts, raw material inventory, completed stock inventory, debtors, creditors, research and development. Instead of just hiding them within the cash flow forecast, making sure we've got sub-accounts prepared so that the investment in those accounts is clearly identified. The cash flow forecast, very important, and the projected balance sheet. And this is the financial interpretation of the business plan. Over the years, I've helped some people review work that's been done by others, and I've been alarmed at the lack of connectability of some of the documents. We've had someone produce a business plan and someone else produce a budget and cash flow forecast, and there's no linkage between the two. It's very important, especially if your client's going to be using these documents to try to raise some capital, that the documents are all linked in effect. So we've got the business plan, which sets out the vision and identifies what the business is going to do and what money they're going to spend on various activities, whether it's a new workshop, a new office, new vehicles, new plant and equipment, and that is then reflected in the outgoings summarised in the financial forecast. Sometimes you'll find it's not. We need a 52-week business advisory system, which is a very important component of what ESS BizTools is offering to our subscribers. And that's daily, weekly, monthly. Now, daily is basically designing a daily report that someone within the client's premises can then prepare. It might be, this is the bank balance, this is the amount of money we're going to pay out this week to major suppliers, and these are the debtors that were due to be paid in the last week that haven't paid. So it's a wake-up call to the leadership team to get into their cars or get onto the phone or whatever and get that money collected because it's needed to make payments. And then we have the weekly performance report, which is very important, so that any variations from expectation can be reviewed and acted on. This is one of the big differences between how big businesses operate and how small businesses operate. Big businesses, I found when I was the chief financial officer of a listed public company, every one of our activities was subject to a weekly performance, profitability estimate report, key performance indicators, and other business metrics. They were analysed each week. We had hundreds of activities. And a lot of big companies do exactly the same thing. Woolworths, Coles, IGA franchisees all do the same thing so that they know their results very accurately each week. Compare that to the average small business operator who doesn't get any information, and it's a year and probably another 4, 5, 7 months after the end of the year before a lot of them get any real financial data. It's too late if there'd been problems. So that it's important they know their activities. And then this might lead into helping your clients to get their documentation prepared to be able to raise capital. There's Early Stage Innovation Company, which was put in place to assist companies who have undertaken research and development. In fact, that's one of the key entry criteria. There are a couple of others, but if your client spent a significant amount of their expenditure on research and development, they've got a very good run into being accepted as an early stage innovation company. And the real benefit there is the government pays an incentive bonus to the investors. The incentive bonus is 20% of their investment. There is an upper limit for retail investors. The upper limit for sophisticated investors is $200,000, and they get that as a tax credit. But the big benefit is if they hold those shares in this new company for more than 12 months and less than 10 years, they pay no capital gains tax when they sell those shares. The other activity is crowdsource funding equity raising. There's a lot more I think could be done with crowdsource funding equity raising. And even though it's had a lukewarm support out of our profession, in my opinion, over $450 million has been raised, and it's helped some companies really get started. So companies up to $25 million turnover can raise up to $5 million in a 12-month period. Now, the average is around a $900,000 capital raise. There's only been 4 or 5 companies raise the full $5 million, but they can go back and raise additional funds in following years. It all has to go through a person with a financial services license that's received from ASIC, the accreditation to be a crowdsource funding advisor. And then we got capital raising under Section 708 of the Corporations Act, which is the ability to raise up to $2 million in 12 months from a maximum of 20 investors. So there's opportunities. But to do that, your client is going to need the research and development, which gives them the vision. This is what we're trying to do. We've already done some preliminary work. We've already been accepted by Oz Industry into this program. That gives significant credibility to the company. And you've then helped them prepare their business plan, their budgets and financial forecasts, and you're able to satisfy potential investors that there's some real control that's been implemented in this business, because they know each week how they're going, and they have monthly financial accounts. They're continually comparing their KPIs and business benchmark. Our system will also assist you to perform the role of a virtual chief financial officer, so that we've given you guidelines and reports that would be submitted to a board of advice or board of directors. So the initial internal audit role that I said in the opening of this conversation today has the potential to lead your firm into a wide range of commercial and management accounting issues to assist your clients to grow. It gives the offer of a fascinating journey for your clients, who will be very appreciative, but also for your accounting team. Because I get calls every month from all over Australia from accountants. And in the conversation, I get asked, Pete, we can get some staff. Having trouble getting staff. We're going to have to outsource more and more of our work. It's very difficult. But if you've got interesting and challenging work for your team, my observation is those firms are able to attract and retain talent because of the work, and your firm will do very well out of the fee income that can be earned. So you can subscribe to ESS BizTools for whatever you want. You can start with the introduction package, which will give you the resources to be able to have a conversation with your client and answer the basic questions that I try to give you a couple of examples of during this presentation. So you can bring up and show the client the flow chart that you can indicate to them. You can email the flow chart to them so they can have a good look at it. You can give them some articles to go away and read. And you can track the story through. Now, if the client comes back to you and says, okay, we want to go ahead and do this, you've got a decision to make then. Are you going to stay in the game with them in effect and give them ongoing guidance, perform that internal audit role, bring it all together, lodge the return with Oz Industry and the tax return? I hope that's your decision. But if you decide to do that, you will need our research and development consolidated package because it covers that whole process. The introductory package is to enable you to be able to have an informed conversation with your client. And those packages are both available for a separate subscription. But you could then subscribe to the financial forecasting package, which is a conglomerate of a range of activities, all the activities that ESS BizTools has, actually. So those other items that I was talking to you before about the business plan, predictive accounting reports, the 52-week business enhancement system, documentation to raise capital, the virtual chief financial officer services, and 20 other major business-related packages like buying a business, selling a business, personal property securities register requirements, debtors management, whole range of activities you would then have to be able to utilize with your clientele. So, do you want to know more? You can go to our website, www.essbiztools.com.au, and click on Packages and Pricing, where you will be able to look at the 3 packages that I've in fact mentioned today: the Research and Development Introduction, the Research and Development Consolidated package, or the Financial Forecasting package, which is one of our major packages. Or if you want to, you can send me an email, peter@ESS BizTools, and we'll organise an analysis of your firm's system requirements that you will need to deliver financial, commercial, management, accounting, and advisory services. I can't see that I've got any questions. I hope I've answered your questions. If you think of questions later on, or you are watching this recording at a time more suitable for you, please send me an email, peter@essbiztools.com.au. So have a great day, and I look forward to talking to you again in the future. Thank you for being with us. Goodbye.